Okay, the recording has started. Seems like Shane is having some internet troubles. So we'll leave the introduction for Reweld Campus later on in the presentation. But just as like a brief overview of Reweld Campus is a nonprofit organization that aims to move away from pesticides and specifically pesticide use on college campuses. So they work with students, faculty, administration, groundskeepers themselves to work on education around why we should move more towards organic maintenance, strategies on how to make administrations decide that they would like to move away from pesticides and also help with students and advocacy. So I'll have a link at the end where we'll take some feedback from you guys to incorporate into like a longer form education material for people to use in this like sort of mission that Reweld Your Campus has. So just to go over the order, we are going to have three presentations. The first will be from Harvard University, and then we will have Seattle University present, and then finally University of Washington. And so I'll let the speakers introduce themselves once they start their presentation. But right first, we're going to have Andrea and Jason McKay for Harvard University. So let me pull up those slides now.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Andrea Philippone, and my partner, Jason McKay, from Harvard University. So we've been working with Harvard since 2008 to manage Harvard's campus organically and sustainably. Right now, the slide that you see is of Harvard's Johnston Gate, which is one of the entries where we did our test plots initially. Next. Just a little bit of background on F2 environmental design, that we are an organization that focuses on organic land management from the point of view of soil. Soil is life. The only way that we can approach design and maintenance is through science and looking at the microorganisms and what is present and what we want to add to the soil in order to make it a closed loop system. We also are very interested in education and research. That also plays a large part in what we do, and working with a lot of different organizations from universities, public parks, to private landscapes. Next. These are the goals that, in terms of working with Harvard, that we need to shoot for in terms of managing an organic landscape. First and foremost, balancing the soil biology to increase nutrient cycling capacity, which enables us to reduce the water usage and also enables us to work on improving compacted soils, which are as a result of the large number of people coming to visit this campus, and the minimization of nitrogen applications for these lawns. This is what we are shooting for and what we've been doing since 2008, which is 17 years now, and the campus is thriving. Jason, do you want to say a few words about that?
I do. If you're not familiar with Harvard University and where it's located, it's in Cambridge, Mass, which is a very urban setting. So it's a very interactive campus with the general public, just not the student population or the campus community. So when Andrea talks about the compaction and the water usage, we've up until 2008. We had the old school mindset of, nitrogen, 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 and, irrigation, irrigation, irrigation. We never really looked at the concept of what was going on below the lawns and the soil. So, the compaction was really a huge, huge hurdle up until 2008 when we started to kind of change the tide a little bit.
Next. Now, these were the test plots done in 2008. Next. And this really is our challenge, is compaction. With an enormous amount of people coming across this campus every single day, you can see in the first image, we couldn't even get a shovel in the ground below 4 inches. And if you look at the image on the right, that's just pulling up a sample of the lawn, and the roots of the lawn are only 2 inches deep. Next. And as a result of this compaction, the lawns don't drain very well. But in order to prove our point, we always do percolation tests. And as you see, here's the process. You dig a hole about 12 inches in diameter. It can go down 12, 24, or 36, depending on the situation you're given to work with. You pour the water in, and then you put a measuring stick in there to see how fast the water drains. And if it doesn't drain, then obviously there are methods in which we need to use to improve the compaction.
I'll also add, it's not just a one hole either. It's usually recommended that you do multiple perk tests throughout an area, so that way you have a pretty good reading on the entire area that you're working on.
The goal is to try and look at the entire scope of a project, because one section of the quad or a campus might be completely different than another area. Next. Mm-hmm. So from this test plot, what was done was, since we weren't able to redo all the soils here, the way we addressed it was by blowing in high quality compost, then using a machine called an aerator, which is different than an aerator, because an aerator fractures. It has tines that go into the soil and vibrate, and so it breaks the compaction of the soil down much deeper than an aerator, which typically is only taking plugs about 4 inches deep. And then after that, the seed is applied to the area, and then the compost tea is applied.
Yep. No, that piece of equipment in the right-hand corner is the aerator, and it's been an absolute game changer for our maintenance program in general.
Next.
And actually, if I could just add, Andrew, before you skip to the next one, the aerator, so it also drops seed as it goes as well. So if on that previous picture on the top, you can see on the top of the actual unit, there's a little flop, a little door that you can open up, and it's actually a hopper where you can put seed. So as you're fracturing the ground, you're actually dropping seed as you go.
Right. So it's a very efficient machine to use on campus, and they use it much more frequently on golf courses. So here is, after 4 weeks, our control. We had a control where we were continuing to use whatever sort of weed or feed type applications that they were doing, so that we could compare to what they used to do to what is a new approach, a biological approach to managing this campus. So here's the control, and it's still about 2 inches deep root growth. Next. And then with the amendments that we made, which we showed 2 slides ago, which was blowing in the compost, doing the aerator, and then the compost tea application. So no fertilizer, no chemicals being used. The root growth on this is between 7 to 8 inches. And what's really remarkable here is that means that these roots and this method help to break through that compaction that was at 4 inches that we could not even get through with a shovel. Next. So how really to approach a landscape maintenance program. And what I would like to say is whether you're doing it organically or sustainably, you still need to be striving for best practices. In our case, we are process-based. We are not product-based. We are not using any chemicals here. So the focus is soil management, specifically to try and address the difficult compaction issues that this campus has, composting and making compost and making compost tea, or if what we like to say is biological infusions, plant selection and placement, pest and disease control, but non-toxic, using beneficials also, irrigation management, which obviously if we have deeper roots, we have less water usage, proper planting techniques, and proper pruning techniques. Jason, would you like to add anything?
No, I'm okay on this slide here, Andrea.
Okay, next. Okay, this really isn't rocket science. These are our basic tools. Our soil probe, our shovel, which we can do core samples to look at the depths of the roots, the ruler, which we use for our percolation tests, our sample bags, our Sharpie, the soil samples we're taking, and then last is we are sending out these soil samples for tests on its chemical, textural, and then the third for us that's important that most people leave out is the biological. Next.
If I could just add there too,
Sure.
It's super important to start out with testing your soils. I always tell people you need to know what your current condition is and situation is before you can decide on where you want to go or what next steps you may need. So, doing a soil test is really huge just to get a little bit of feedback on what your current site or conditions might be.
So exactly that. In these soil tests, we are creating our base level. This is what we have to work with, and we analyze these tests. So we first do a chemical, we send it out to UMass, a textural, we send it out to UMass, and then the third one is biological, which we do in-house at F2 Environmental Design, but we also send it out to Soil Food Web in Long Island. And we are looking at very specific aspects on these tests. Because I only have 15 minutes to work with you guys, and not enough time to go through and teach you what you really need to look at each one of these tests. But you do have to have all three in order to get an overview of the soil and the existing conditions. They can tell you if the specific textural gradation is going to make for a soil that's easily compactable with any kind of machinery that could be going over it, for example. Or the biological will tell you that you might not have enough protozoans. If you don't have enough protozoans, you're not going to have very much available nitrogen in the soil. Next. And from that, the next point to go to is really looking at what you have on that campus to work with in order for you to make compost. And we have several recipes, but in this particular slide, we're showing you 2 different recipes, a bacterial and a fungal mix, and then looking at the nitrogen, your greens and your woodies, and you mix them in different percentages to get what you need for the specific situation that you're working on. Next. So here are the components that Harvard has to work with, and they separate it in different bins. And then obviously from the previous slide, then they put them together in different percentages to get the compost that they need to use either to apply directly onto a landscape or mix into the soils and or to use for the biological infusion. Next. And this is what the Harvard puts out in terms of handouts, leaflets, in terms of educating students on campus and or any classes that we offer. And so it just talks about the temperature, the aeration, the moisture, the percentages for different applications. Next. And then back in the areas in which the compost tea or the biological infusions are created, they have different bins. This is the compost that's used to brew the compost tea. And then once it's brewed in those 250-gallon brewers, it is applied with a water tank that it's put onto these tractors and applied on campus. You notice the signs that say organic on it. Harvard's very proud of that. And also to note that the machine that's being used on these lawns have a certain PSI so that they are the least compacting on the campus. Next. And then before we make those applications on the lawn or to the trees or to the shrubs, we always look at the samples under a microscope. And we can look at those samples from day 1, day 2, day 3. And what we are trying to look at is the relationship of the number of bacteria to the number of protozoans. And once we have the least number of bacteria and the most amount of protozoans, we know that it's the right time to apply the compost tea to the specified areas.
Right. Yeah, very important to know that your compost is, you have active bacteria in there. Otherwise, essentially, you're just applying dirty water to your site or campus or location. So it's very, very important to know that what you have is a good product.
And the other thing is there's certain times a year when applying the compost tea is more effective. So the fall and the spring or early summer are the best times. And the reason for that is because there's a lot much more moisture in the soil. It's not during the dry periods. The protozoans need liquid to move. And if they don't have that, then they're going to go in their dormant state and they won't be as effective at that particular time. Next. Kiana, can you just hit the screen? That's pretty slow. But what you're supposed to see is this protozoan circus that you're seeing ciliates and flagellates should be flying across this image so that you can see the amount of activity. What are we actually seeing under the microscope? And it is quite beautiful. Up there, you're seeing it now a little bit faster. Things are just cruising across the screen. But that's what we're looking for when we're looking at it under the microscope, and we're seeing very little bacteria, but an enormous amount of protozoan activity. Next. And if you hit the screen again, this is a ciliate. And I really wanted you to get a sense of what we're looking for and the amazing amount of life that you see in just one drop of liquid coming from the compost tea. It's unbelievable the amount of life that you see in this little drop.
And And also during the brewing, the bacteria it populates. So this is just from, I think, 3 drops out of a little droplet thing and put on a slide under the microscope. But during the brewing process, it doubles. The bacteria populates. It doubles about every half hour, 30 minutes or so. So you can only imagine what a 250-gallon tea brewer actually has for positive bacteria and activity.
So the image on the left is a stalk ciliate, and then on the right, a star amoeba. I mean, they're just so unbelievably beautiful and so much fun to see. And I just want you to see the beauty of what we are typically seeing under the microscope. And that, it's under our feet, thousands, millions of them. Next. And the other thing that we are growing in the compost is fungi. And we need a diversity of microorganisms and fungi and nematodes to enable us to have this natural nutrient cycling happening in the soil. We need all these elements to be present at the same time. Next. So what I'm going to show you here are 2 soil analysis from the Soil Food Web. And this is a biological analysis of the soil. And if you look at all the numbers, the middle row, it says protozoan numbers. And you see flagellates, amoebas, and ciliates. Those are the protozoans. Those are the numbers that we are looking at in relationship to the bacteria. And depending on that ratio, it will give us our plant available nitrogen supply, which is in the bottom right-hand corner. And in this one, this compost is giving us 300 pounds or more of available nitrogen. So this is a good compost. This is a compost that we can either use to make our soils and or ideally use to make our biological infusions, because with a good compost, we're able to introduce a very high number of protozoans into the soil via a liquid mixture. Next. And then here we've got, in comparison, if you look at the bottom right hand, you have 50 to 75 pounds of available nitrogen. So this would be a compost that I would reject, and I would try and find a better compost to use for the project. Next. This is an illustration of the natural nutrient cycling. The leaves come out in the spring, the leaves fall down in the fall. We leave the leaves, we let them through saprophytic fungi decompose in the ground with the bacteria, which is then feeding the protozoans and the beneficial nematodes and the fungi, which is helping that mycorrhizal event to happen with the roots, which then enable the tree to metabolize the nutrients that it needs to feed itself and to produce more leaves in the spring. Next. And I can't say enough that the most important tool that we use on campus is a soil probe. If somebody says, how much water do we need, or how much compaction do we have, I'd be guessing to say what it was unless I had this tool. Jason, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, we probe multiple times a week for, our campus is 70 plus acres. So we probe multiple times a week. And it's good to teach staff on probing parts of their area of a campus as well, for the simple fact that when you start to see a new planting or tree or anything starting to wilt and look a little bit stressed, I think any young landscaper or somebody just get into the industry, the natural inclination is to give it more water, when in fact it shows the same stress characteristics if you're overwatering. So sometimes it's better to leave it alone, but you don't know unless you probe and really monitor the moisture levels of your soil. So this is a great tool.
Everybody should have one. Go buy one now. And the other thing that's done on campus is, in terms of dealing with the compaction, is a multiple grouping of things. One is doing the core aeration with an aerator. In this particular situation, we like to top dress with a coarse sand, which we call our base component sand. And that sand has a lot of different textural gradations to it. And then we go over with an aerator, and as Jason was mentioned earlier, this aerator has the tines that fracture the soil, and then at the same time as they're doing, it's got the box on top of it that's got the grass seed on it, and then the grass seed drops, and then after that, a compost tea application is made. Again, it's process-based, not product-based here. We are not using any chemicals and or fertilizers here. Next. This is basic. We've got our existing materials. We've got our sand, or what we like to call our base component, which has got a diverse textural gradation, and then compost. And these three things mixed together in different ratios will enable us to create the soils that we need at different levels of planting on campus. Next. So drainage is key for us. We have our existing subsoil. We have our base component, which is a sand-based material. And then our lower root zone is what we showed in the previous slide, the existing loam with compost and sand at a different ratio, has a little bit more sand, less compost. And then the upper root zone has more compost and less sand. Next. And this is the method that we use in planting any shrubs, trees, lawns at Harvard. We start with the existing subsoil, then we have the base component, which is the sand layer. Then the middle images is putting in the next layer, the lower root zone, and then the right slide is showing the upper root zone. Next. And this is our goal. We want to get deep roots. We want to get them to be 23 inches, 24 inches, not the 2 inches that you saw in the soil when we started working on campus. Next. And we also give classes at Harvard dealing with this in more detail. We bring in other experts too, people that deal with beneficial insects, and also people bring their specific situations to the class that we discuss and try and help them find solutions for. Next. And these are our class participants. Many times they're just people from different campuses or different parks who are needing help managing their campuses organically and sustainably. Next. And what we like is that the president of Harvard is super psyched to show everybody out there what they're doing at Harvard and to show them exactly the depths of the roots in the lawn, because it's something that they can see. It's more tactile. It's not just talking about what's happening below the surface. But this is Drew Faust when she was president while we were working on this project. Jason, do you want to say something?
I do. I think in the landscape industry, a lot of times we're judged on, judged on based on results. And so seeing is believing a lot of times. And I think when you can show somebody the benefit or what the dividends might pay off down the road, I think they're more inclined to maybe support the cause or help you develop a program. So I think any organization that's thinking about, making a change or at least giving it a try, if you can just start small with a little test plot before you really jump in both feet I think that'll be huge as far as what you'll get for support, in your community or with your organization.
Next. And our last two slides, just being very happy of seeing these kids lying on the lawn and not having to worry about any chemicals or fertilizers being used. Next. And just loving the way campus looks all year round. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate the time that you let us take to make this presentation.
Thank you.
Amazing. That was a beautiful presentation. Thank you again, Andrea and Jason, for stepping up and being willing to do this presentation. I think it was super informative and important. And next we're going to have Seattle University. Shannon, you can feel free to introduce yourself while I pull up the slides.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the Harvard presentation. That was pretty in-depth and amazing. Thank you very much. I am Shannon Britton with Seattle University. And just a quick overview on my background. I've been with Seattle University since 2009. And actually one of my slides goes into this in a little more depth. So hopefully those come up here in a second. Our focus here, as we know, is on practicing organic and pesticide-free land care. So I want to wait just a second for Kiana. There we go. Kiana, are you going to cue down through the presentation? So do I let you know when to change slides?
Yeah, you can just let me know when to hit next.
All right, great. I want to start with acknowledging whose land the university sits on. We recognize that Seattle University is located on the ancestral homelands of the Duwamish people. And we pay respect to Coast Salish elders, past and present, and extend that respect to their descendants and to all Indigenous people. Go ahead. Thank you. So as I was mentioning, my background of 30 plus years in practicing pesticide-free land care. And sorry, that chat window keeps distracting me. Between 1986 and 2003, I worked for Evergreen Hospital, where I initiated integrated pest management practices and transitioned away from pesticide use and instead using soaps, beneficial insects, mulch, right plant, right place, and much, much more. Between 2003, 2006, I went to Western Washington University to get my environmental science degree and as a bachelor's of science. Then worked for Snohomish County, 2005 to 2008 in public works doing freshwater surveys. Worked for Woodland Park Zoo for a short stint, helping them with some ground sustainable maintenance there. And then since 2009, been with Seattle University, applying sustainable landscape maintenance to campus. Go ahead. It's important to recognize whose shoulders all of us here in the grounds department stand on. And these two elders that you see here have been prominent in the history of grounds and landscape management here on campus. Fujitara Kubota in 1965. You can see there in a photo of 1965 pruning on campus. He initiated over 20 gardens for SU starting in 1946 and continuing into the 1960s. He led the way in Pacific Northwest landscape design, founded in Japanese principles that reflect simplicity and low maintenance. And the other character to the right there, Cisco Morris, in 1985, he's pruning a pine on campus. Around that same time, he led campus into pesticide-free gardening and land care founded in IPM principles where he encouraged interest in and excitement for biodiversity and support for wildlife on campus. Go ahead. wanted to just show this. I know it's hard to read all the small print, but it's really important for our university that we have a policy and a procedure in place that it demonstrates an approach that focuses the process and informs the university administration of the seriousness and the importance of pesticide-free and organic landscape care. And this is one way to officially make that so. That also it not only does it inform the administration, but they agree to it. Go ahead. It's really important, I think, to highlight staffing, which includes student employees. As you can see, there are numbers of full-time employees and student employees. The investment in employee professional development is really important to understanding, bringing that understanding of sustainability and organic land care to a deeper level. It inspires a circular innovation and leadership in their work, the work of the staff for the institution. Partnering with them at all levels, with our staff, our students, our faculty, the community here on campus, in finding solutions that are in the true spirit of integrated pest management, which to me means pesticide-free, or what we often refer to the OMRI certified product, which is the Organic Materials Review Institute, as a way of sourcing what else is out there, how else can we make decisions in the best practices of pesticide-free and IPM. And we openly invite conversation to navigate and accompany challenges. We don't encounter too much in the way of obstacles here on campus, but I have heard of other universities that do. Sometimes it's hard to bring the staff along. So in the spirit of that, invite them to the table, navigate what might be blocks or challenges for them in a way that acknowledges that for them and brings them along. Go ahead. This slide shows that demonstrates the several projects. There's a lot on here, but it demonstrates several projects over a long period of time where the ground staff, student employees, students from classrooms come out and participate in many ways. Longer projects like the bee monitoring project. One of the slides down there on the bottom, a couple of them there show a group of students from the Engineer Sustainability Club that wanted to put in a rain garden and learn about the details of that and how that impacts the environment, and the importance of water conservation, collecting runoff, and things like that in the environment. And then another couple of slides showing students either building a bug hut down there on the right as part of our wildlife garden, and then on the far left, students helping us plant a cedar tree on campus. Other things to note on this slide are elements of organic land care for Seattle University, and some of the intent of how we go about that with pesticide-free management, weed management, integrated pest management, how that prioritizes organic and sustainable methods, and the importance for campus of the biodiversity wildlife habitat. So that helps support the natural balance of ecosystem services here on campus. Soil testing efforts for pest and disease, as well as turf, and the two vendors that we use for that, the Soil Food Web and Earth Fort. Fertilizers, the place that uses the most, it would be our soccer field, and they use an OMRI certified product for cool season grasses, as well as other products that are organic through the vendors that they use. And then, of course, water conservation practices that include central control, low flow equipment, and drought tolerant plantings. Go ahead. One of the important things on campus that we've put a lot of effort and budget and funding toward is green equipment. We continue to transition where feasible away from gas powered to electric powered. And we've had the Ego line on campus for some time now. You can see in the bottom right hand the little fleet of mowers that we have there. That is the Ego brand. We have more recently been purchasing the Still line of battery powered equipment. You can see in the bottom right there next to the Ego, that's the newest piece that the team really likes. It's a handheld sort of trigger operated little battery powered chainsaw, which they love to use for pruning. We'll probably end up getting more of those. And then the other pictures show a variety of battery powered line trimmers, battery powered hedge trimmers. We also have battery powered small chainsaws, more the traditional style. These are making a really big difference on campus. I didn't get in there the fleet of blowers, battery powered blowers that we have, both Ego and Still. It's making a big difference for our team in terms of ergonomics. Much lighter to use, less noise, less decibels of noise that our teams are exposed to when using these types of equipment. So it's very popular, very favorable, and we plan to continue to change out when we can and when budget allows. We're still in some situations where it just makes more sense to have a gas powered for the robust operation of that piece of equipment, but it is becoming less. I didn't show the carts. We have, as you can see, a number of different battery powered carts that we use on campus. Most of them are street legal, so we can take them across the city streets and back and forth for the different properties. Not all properties for Seattle University and our 50 acres are contiguous, so there is quite a bit of street driving. We've had really good luck with length of life and longevity of this equipment. Each of these brands that you see here, we've had on campus for a number of years, going back some of them going back 20, 30 years. Okay, thanks. Go ahead. Just quick look at what are some of the ongoing maintenance challenges as part of being organic and pesticide free. What are we looking at? We're always managing plant growth and scheduling a routine of pruning and trimming maintenance, tree pruning maintenance. Our teams do anything that they can handle from the ground, or maybe a 6 or an 8 foot ladder. Anything bigger than that, we work with Bartlett tree experts, and also Davy Tree for right-of-way tree pruning on the streets. There's a quick look at Championship Field, organic maintenance and water conservation efforts there, as I mentioned in a previous slide. And then another one in here. I guess I took it out. Anyways, just a couple of notes. We're always working with weed management. We're always working with tree and weed management. From a labor standpoint, organically and sustainably means a lot of handwork and consciousness and cognizance of how do we pay attention to that and schedule those things. So just wanted to show a couple of slides there. Go ahead. This will be my last slide. This is highlighting a couple of places where we have transitioned the landscape to make it a little easier to maintain, since we are pesticide free. The Kubota Legacy Garden at Senegal Hall is a newer garden. It's been in about almost 2 years now. And that dense planting and the plant selection was very thoughtful in terms of low maintenance, in terms of the type of plants and density, covering the ground, creating the shade, preventing the weed seeds from coming in as much as possible. It's been very, very successful. There are a couple of spots where we made some alterations after the fact, but for the most part, that design has worked very, very well. little look at a smaller spot there, the Murphy Residence Hall Drive. That was just a small spot, but not insignificant because it's right on a corner where vehicles are coming around. We needed to make sure we're maintaining line of sight while at the same time covering the ground so that we're not over there weeding all the time. So that has since been planted with some native grasses. The Chardin edible garden space, again, we were replacing some lawn with some edible garden space, something of interest, something that doesn't require return each week for mowing, but that also mostly maintains itself. There's not a lot of weeding that needs to happen there because of the density and the type of plantings and plantings of interest there. The Labyrinth Garden was a newer space about 2-3 years ago. Again, replacing lawn, replacing some difficult place because we have large trees in that space. Very difficult to maintain lawn in there, as well as some other pathways. So it was a great place to just transition away from that and into a contemplative garden space. It's worked out pretty well. And then, of course, I always like to highlight the students whenever I can. These are very happy edible campus students. They had just harvested some garlic out of one of the edible campus spaces. And very, very important that we work and partner with students across campus, and because they get to learn this stuff, and it's really fun for them. That's it for my slides. I kept it short and simple, and happy to take any questions. Anybody that wants to, I'll put my email in the chat if you want to reach out to me after this. More than welcome to. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentations, Shannon. Really great overview. We are coming up at the hour. We're still going to have the University of Washington present, and feel free to keep putting in the chat any questions you might have, and our presenters and us will try to answer as many as we can. Right, so I'm going to start sharing for the University of Washington. So Tyson, you can feel free to introduce yourself.
And Tyson, I don't want you to feel like you have to present your 15 minutes in 5 minutes. This will be recorded, so you should take your time. And if folks need to hop off, they can, and they can watch the recording to get your info. I don't want you to have to speed talk for 5 minutes. So take your time.
Okay, great, fair enough. Hi, everybody. I'm so honored to be here with my colleagues from Harvard, from Seattle U. Good to see you. My name's Tyson Kemper. I am a gardener. Also run the grounds department here at University of Washington Bothell, which is a branch campus of the University of Washington. Before we get started kind of on our overview of our journey to organic land care, a little bit about the campus. It's a relatively new campus. It was opened to students January of 2000. So we're about 25 years old. I've been here for almost 20 years of that. I started right before we started our journey towards organic land care. Didn't have an intention necessarily of staying long term, but it was in large part because we've been practicing organic land care that I really chose to, give a good portion of my career to this place. So, honored to be a part of this journey and this piece of land. We are a 135-acre campus. Most notably, I'll say there's the huge green space at the bottom of the slide. 58 acres of our campus is a restored floodplain wetland. For much of the 1900s, this wetland space at the bottom of our hill, which campus is situated on, was a cattle pasture and raised about 500 head of beef cattle every year. We welcome every year, so it's a co-located campus as well. I'll take a little bit of a step back. Cascadia College is co-located on this site as well. I don't see any boundaries between the two institutions. We treat the land and the campus landscape holistically as far as the grounds perspective goes. We push 10,000 students between the two institutions every year as part of our campus community. The sports field that you see in the center of the picture is synthetic. so not grass. And there are 8 gardeners who work the site. There are 2 distinct teams, one of them a team of 2 that focus on the wetland restoration area, and then the remaining 6 focused on the uplands, built environment, gardens, campus space with most of the population. All right, next, please. So we went organic in the spring of 2006. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see this gentleman, Tony Guerrero. He was our facilities director at the time. We were really, really lucky in that this transition to go organic was championed by this individual. Happened to be at a higher level within the administration, and really set the stage for us, which was fantastic. A little bit of history and background about him and kind of where he was coming from. He was in the 90s facilities manager at Kingdom. It was a time when recycling was becoming a thing. The idea of sustainability was becoming a thing, a bit of a buzzword. He really championed some of the first larger scale recycling efforts at the Kingdom. To a lot of positive accolades, and really felt like he was kind of an innovator and was kind of on the front lines of some of the sustainability movement, and really felt good about that. He joined us at UW Bothell in 2003. It was soon after that the way he tells it, he was at a facilities conference, higher education facilities managers conference at Seattle U. Saw their landscape, thought it was very impressive, learned during that conference that they were organic, sustainably managed landscape. And he came back with that idea to UW Bothell and was telling us that, if Seattle University can do it, then so can we. So part of what's so beautiful, yeah, thank you, Shannon, and Seattle U. There's like these legacies that happen, and these connections and these continuities of growth and inspiration. And Rewild Your Campus doing really good work. Webinars like this and all of your outreach hopefully is inspiring others to take this path as well. And we are true testament that inspiration from one institution can really make a huge change in another institution. So just wanted to acknowledge that. What going organic meant to us when we began in the spring of 2006 was no herbicides, no pesticides, and no chemical fertilizers. So that was kind of how it was framed from Tony. We were blessed to have a champion above us that was kind of mandating this on campus. Was fantastic. Certainly gains us a leg up, I know, in a lot of institutions where convincing the administration that this is a good path to take is maybe a little more challenging. It wasn't all smooth sailing. I think it's fair to say that Tony came from a place of, flat green lawns and sheared shrubs and trees were the kind of the aesthetic and the baseline that he wanted to see. As campus began to shift and change aesthetically, as we really leaned into sustainability, which being a sustainable campus is so much more than just not using pesticides. It's so much more about practice and intention over the long term. It was not always smooth sailing, and we did have to figure out ways to gain support, build coalition on campus. Next. So we began building coalitions over time to address kind of some of these practical changes that we were doing in the landscape. And of course, it was shifting the way the landscape felt and looked and functioned. So again, back to Tony, you see this wad of worms that I'm holding here. This is a graduate student cohort pursuing the teaching certificate here at UW Bothell. Tony, during his time at the Kingdom, got into like worms and vermicomposting, reading this book, Worms Eat My Garbage, was really inspired to start doing this at his home. Really loved it, brought it here on campus, and we were starting to do some worm composting here on campus. And it was really the gateway into us connecting with the campus community and starting to do tours. And in doing these tours and outreach, we were able to share what we were doing, the intentions about why we were going organic and how it was important, answer questions. We were held accountable for this, this journey by the folks who were interested in what we were up to. So that was a really positive thing. And we started doing tours, not just about, our organic land management, but started to give tours about the wetland and the ecosystem that existed there, general tours about campus and the campus history. It really kind of opened us up to be members, like really active members of the community, not just gardeners, but educators as well. And that really started this coalition building. I guess I want to back up a little bit in saying that, again, Tony was committed to this. We started organic land care 100% from day one. I know that's not always an option for some institutions. Maybe it's doesn't even sound like a good idea. I will put my full support behind it. What happened with us was that there was a huge baggage that was taken off of our shoulders in committing 100% from the beginning. We didn't have that. We weren't carrying around this ball and chain of having herbicides and pesticides available. Before, we started that spring of 2006, I had other landscapers out, other institutions. We gave away all of our product, all of our fertilizers. We were never thinking about, is this too much for us? Is this the moment when maybe we'll take a step back and use some of these herbicides or pesticides in this situation? We never had to, it was much, much harder to bend to the pressure of certain individuals that may be pressuring us to take certain actions by using chemicals for short-term fixes. Much, much harder to say yes to that, coming from the fact that we were committed 100%. It also really exposed a lot of the challenges and problems, not problems, but just challenges. Traditionally, we've been gardening for so much longer without chemicals than with chemicals. It's a fairly recent phenomenon. So all of these new challenges really presented themselves to us really quickly and really early on. And we were immediately, of that mindset that how do we move forward through this? Not, how can we leverage a little bit of pesticide use to kind of help us along? Really, really helped in our success, I think. And maybe even more importantly, helped in completely shifting our mindset, and which then led to really being mindful about our intentions from the beginning, which really changed everything. One of the biggest things that actually encouraged was we saw early on that we had an opportunity to build identity around this idea of being a sustainable campus, even more so than just organic grounds maintenance, but just this campus, the fabric of the campus in general, in terms of waste, in terms of purchasing decisions, in terms of community outreach, all of these types of interrelated things that have to do with sustainability, the teaching outcomes, the teaching content. Granted, we were and are a young institution, and so it was a bit more of a void for that identity building to take place. But it's really, really became a defining feature of this campus. So again, back to some of the coalition building that we instituted. Outreach was going strong. It was really challenging us as gardeners and, making us really learn our practices well so that we could teach about them. Started hiring students during the summer really intentionally. So full-time commitment. We were not hiring seniors. We were looking for mainly freshmen that, just graduating freshmen, sophomores, juniors, with the idea that we would be embedding these students within our gardening teams in the wetlands and the uplands, and they would be learning all of our practices and all of our intentions. We really believe that the future of public landscape management is organic landscape management. So we were like feeding their minds with that information. And then this idea that they would then have another year or two to be back in class with their student cohorts, and they would be like spreading the word for us. And that really started to happen. And that was fantastic to see. The faculty started to catch wind of this, creating all of these collaboration opportunities with the faculty, shifting somewhat their teaching strategies. We started to think about the landscape in terms of living laboratory and experiential learning opportunities as we collaborated more and more with faculty. So that was super positive. We have an Office of Connected Learning as well that really tried to connect with classes and get students volunteering in the community in real world situations to gain knowledge as well. So that was already a kind of a built-in mission of the university. We leveraged that in that we were starting to offer projects within the landscape surrounding organic land care or sustainability, present those to the Office of Connected Learning, and then they would build those volunteer opportunities into the classes that the faculty at the time were teaching. So we were getting these students that were volunteering with us for 20 hours to 40 hours a quarter, building projects like presentations surrounding what they were doing with us, and then presenting those projects to the class. Again, we have teachers, we have these students that are teaching, that are spreading the word about what we're doing and why we're doing it and why the campus looks and feels the way it does. I started to hear orientation leaders. So these are the students that do all of the tours during the summer with parents, with new students, with students that student groups are trying to recruit. We're working in the landscape. We're hearing these orientation leaders talk about the landscape, and there was just so much, both misinformation, not intentionally, but misinformation about what they're seeing and why. And then also I realized that there was another really good opportunity for this identity building and for to spread the word about what we were doing through these orientation leaders who were giving 100 tours every summer. So I became embedded within their training program during the winter and early spring quarters before they launched into this in the summer, and was able to give them a presentation about campus history, organic land care, and actually take them on a tour and show them campus through my eyes, and so that they could embed some of that perspective in their campus tours. So the students now and the parents of these prospective students are getting this information before they even start school here on campus. So already kind of part of their expectation of this place, which really helped us out in all sorts of kind of more radical things that we're trying to pursue. And then all of this positive feedback loop within the campus community kind of built the identity, built the coalition, and we were able to eventually lobby to actually have a sustainability coordinator position created and supported within facilities. And that's really taken it to the next step as far as like broadening what sustainability means on a campus, not just environmental, but social. Also has been a really big help of connecting with more students, because it does take a ton of time, ton of my time, ton of the gardeners team time to do this outreach. It's really, really satisfying and fruitful, but there's also nobody else changing out the garbages and weeding the beds and trimming the lawns and things like that. So that's been a really great help as well in all of this. Next. And then there's certifications. They have certainly been helpful for us. There are loads of them out there, some of them very expensive, some of them not. Regardless, it's been a really good way for us as a grounds team to really early on to like be given kind of a framework about how to think about this holistically, land management wise, and move forward. So there's kind of some guardrails and there's some goals that are set. The Green Grounds certification through Rewild Your Campus does a really good job of that, just kind of setting these goals and expectations and pushing it along. They also provide a wonderful network of support, both peers as well as professionals, and just inspiration. So it's been a fantastic one. We were one of the founding grantees of that certification in 2023, along with Seattle U. A lot of them are self-reporting, which is fine. It's a little harder to be held truly accountable, and it's really hard to kind of hold the higher ups or administration accountable when it's just self-reporting. Very easy to take steps back. Salmon Safe is one of those that's quite expensive and rigorous, but really, really good in that they demand a lot of everybody from the chancellor administration wise all the way down to the practitioners, the gardeners on campus. They bring a team of scientists from different aspects of the field, from water quality, the landscape management, to buildings, materials and things like that, to the table during the certification and the recertification processes. So there's a lot of expertise that they're bringing and pretty high expectations, and they have conditions that must be met in order to keep the certification going. So it really motivates if the administration wants to keep this certification and they want to be able to, use this as a promotional tool, really, really powerful in that way. They're going to have to put some money and resources behind some of this. It also keeps us focused on the bigger goal, which is to be as sustainable as possible. So that's also another one that I really would point to. Also, just the fact that we can have maybe some signages up about this, some Bee Campus USA or Wild Habitat. I feel that it gives people an opportunity to maybe Google what that might mean or what that organization is all about, and kind of get another perspective and a lens into kind of what is important to us as a campus and what we're striving for. Next. So back to the beginning, and Tony, and where we started with, no pesticides, herbicides, chemical fertilizers, which was fantastic. The mindset from the beginning, and this is, I guess, somewhat true from the gardening team as well, was that it would just be a simple switch of products from chemical products to organic products, and otherwise the landscape maintenance would essentially stay the same. The landscape would just kind of carry on in the same vein as it was before. And this was so far from the truth, from our truth anyway, in that and again, all of this was an organic thing, organic in the sense of like it was, we didn't have really clear guidelines and path forward. We had our own experiences. I definitely brought an experience of working as a botanist in the field with rare plants, with damaged and degraded ecosystems and restoration. So that kind of ecological lens, as well as my horticultural lens. Anyway, it was surprising that as a team, we really started to look at the landscape differently. And it was really exciting. And we started thinking about things like the watershed that we were in, both micro and macro, in a new way, or for the first time. We had campus was built in large part on this site because of the mitigation efforts that took place in recreating this historic floodplain wetland. It is the entire campus's stormwater system as well as some neighboring properties. We're completely independent of the city of Bothell's stormwater system. And we started to kind of finally see that and celebrate that. Not all campuses and institutions have the luxury of having half of their space a well-supported wetland restoration project, but we are all part of a watershed. Each and every space is, and what we do in the watershed, in the upland portions of it, affects the watershed downstream, it affects our immediate site, and it continues to affect the watershed downstream. It affects our water quality, it affects the greater regional water quality, and all that kind of cascades from that. So we started thinking about that for the first time. That was really exciting. It linked together what was going on in the wetlands as far as restoration-minded landscape management to what we were doing in the uplands, which was not restoration-minded at all to begin with, but we saw that we fit into that same puzzle piece and that we are really restoring all of this land collectively. Development is a huge disturbance, as is, the presence of human beings on a site. So we're kind of constantly in this restoration mindset. So that was a really, really positive thing. Next, we started thinking about habitat in a much bigger way. So well beyond wetland restoration area, thinking about habitat everywhere. One of my favorite things is to figure out ways to stick habitat, especially in urban areas. I love urban areas. I love cities. I love public spaces. I love nature. I love that interface when you have nature and public space in dense urban areas. So trying to figure out how to just either stick habitat everywhere or let the land express itself in ways that contributes to habitat and is not so much dictated about what we want from it, but what nature would like to see. And that was really exciting too. So this was one of the biggest mind shift changes that really affected the aesthetics of campus, I would say overall, is this idea of we're not just creating a pretty place that is attractive and tidy and appears pretty for people. We're trying to create a place that was like multiple layers of contribution to not only humans, but the wildlife and pollinators and water quality and all of this other stuff. So that was a really exciting aspect of our kind of paradigm shift as well. Next. We, of course, started thinking about the soils in new ways. We were not being aggressive towards our soils anymore. We started thinking even deeper than that about like how, some of our destructive like bed renovation practices can be on the soil. What kind of soil inputs are we putting in? And we started to think about and use compost so much more. We started mulching everything. I mean, nature is constantly mulching with leaf litter. We started doing a lot more chop and drop mulching where possible. Wood chips became a huge, huge, huge tool for us. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of yards of wood chips spread over campus over time. And it was really, really exciting and hopeful to start seeing within a few years this soil food web that we were learning about. It was starting to grow and build, and the soil structure was improving really quickly compared to what I thought in these degraded soils. All testament to our landscape practices. Soil is also where support of the plants ultimately comes. An organic mindset in fertilization is all about feeding the soil, and the soil will feed the plants. Our soils are healthy, and we're about 20 years into it. Our soils are fantastic. They're, of course, always getting degraded. When new buildings, new construction projects happen, and we need to kind of come in and start again. But overall, collectively, the soils are getting super, super healthy. Other than some compost mulch and or wood chip or just allowing leaf litter to accumulate and decompose over time. We don't use any fertilizer, organic or not, in our landscapes at all, except for, I would say, maybe some new plantings. We do fertilize organically our few irrigated lawns, and then our display pots. But other than that, no fertilizer in the landscape at all. Next. And we started thinking about supporting pollinators. Another thing, and just anecdotally from the beginning, it was a couple years in, and it was undoubtedly, there was an explosion in insects. Pollinators, of course, being a big component of that we, at least that we saw and noticed, which was fantastic. We were starting to think about pollinators when we were making our plant selections. We're choosing plants that support them. So we're choosing plants that have functional flowers that are more maybe wild type in the flower form and function, as opposed to ones that were bred to have more petals and bigger blooms and more blooms, and it looked good to humans, but we're losing, their nectaries and pollen resources, and a lot of times their ability to reproduce and that type of stuff. So we really started thinking about what plants we were encouraging in the landscape in a much different way. One of our major collaborations with professors and students has been an ongoing, we have about 8 years of data now, I believe, on pollinator density and diversity on campus. We're getting some feedback from that group and how they're thinking about pollinators and supporting pollinators. A couple of notable things was, one, they were bringing to our attention that there are bloom gaps in the year and in spaces on campus where there is a lull for weeks to a month of time, where there's within, a comfortable distribution range of certain native, bees. There was very little flowering at that time. So we started with this information that they were bringing us, started making plant and planting decisions to fill some of these bloom gaps around campus in both time and space. Concept I had not considered before. And then also they started getting us, and we were already well on the way to this, but they were super surprised at how much diversity and how many numbers of native bees that we're seeing on campus. I think we now have close to 70 different species, individual species, that we have seen that campus supports. Some of them very large populations that just aren't seen in the surrounding communities quite as much. Why so much on campus? One of the outcomes of that type of questioning was that I'm always thinking about pollinators in terms of providing flowers and resources for them in that context. But there's the other side of that circle, which is, where are they nesting and where are they reproducing? And we were starting to see in these beds that we were treating in different ways. We're not raking them out and cleaning them in quite the same way. We're mulching, and so we're having to go in there less often to disturb the soil. We're doing chop and drop in a lot of our beds and leaving just perennials in general standing longer into the season, even through the winter. All of this providing like these nesting resources for so many native pollinators. Again, something we'd not considered before, but we started to really connect the dots on that. Next. And then lastly, thinking about supporting humans in a very real way. So we're thinking in terms of these landscapes of all these multiple layers, and there's this ecological layers, and there's layers meant to support wildlife, and layers meant to support the soil and the soil health and pollinators. And we really wanted to intentionally build supporting humans into all of that as well. Now, clearly, we're already supporting humans in the fact that getting poison off of the land is creating a healthy environment in which the campus population can just engage the landscape. But being more intentional about some of our planting designs. So one of them being something like this, which is a food forest. it's essentially planted and designed from a landscape perspective as a developing woodland ecosystem that has the high tree canopy, the mid-low tree canopies. We have a shrub canopy. We have the perennials and the herbaceous layer down below. So we have this, like from an ecological concept, a functioning ecosystem. It just so happens that it's filled with fruit and nut trees and fruit shrubs and medicinals. So again, ways to support like humans in the environment as well. These are, fairly urban spaces. They're public gardens. We're welcoming nature into these spaces with open arms, but at the same time want to acknowledge that humans are here too, and we need to use them. And I think we've reached a point where, I'm very comfortable in saying that one should be demanding more of our public spaces, and that two, that they can really do a lot in supporting humans beyond just a pretty place to sit and have lunch. They can support them in so many more deep cultural ways and supporting them through foods and medicines, as well as health, and also be welcoming nature in all of its abundance and glory and all that it brings as far as ecological, systems and resources into a community, as well. So with that, I will end. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tyson, and thank you for everyone who stayed over time with us. And so we are not going to have a Q&A section just because we've already gone over time, but we see all the messages in the chat, and feel free, any presenters that are comfortable putting their information, if you want to drop some contact information for anyone who might want to see them and connect. But yeah, this has been a great webinar. And again, just a big thank you to all the speakers. You guys did amazing. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, and I was just gonna say, if anyone has other questions, you can follow up to Kiana, and we can make sure that they get answered. Or to myself. Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Tyson, for that
everyone.
awesome presentation, and Andrea and Jason and Shannon, those were all great. Thank you guys so much. And we can send out your contact info to everyone as well.
Great seeing everyone.
Follow up. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Good.
Good to see you all.
See you.